Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with Screenwriter's Rant on The Exorcist. The Exorcist. Without the T, The Exorcist. It's a comedy movie out of the Philippines that's a parody of The Exorcist. Go figure. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for being a little moany dog. Thank you for liking and subscribing and helping us out. If you'd like to support the channel and get Joan some more treats, give us a link in the description. Get down there and check out one of my books, buy a book, or perhaps you'd be interested in a Piney Power t-shirt for the Piney in your life, or show your support of South Jersey. Now, The Exorcist, it's called that because it's about two sisters and one gets possessed, like in The Exorcist, right? But it's weird because The Exorcist is almost 50 years old. It's almost 50 years old. So it's a weird choice to parody, right? Even in the United States, where the movie was big, it was huge and still kind of known. I mean, if you're doing a horror parody, a big broad one, say like Scary Movie, you could probably throw in The Exorcist, right? You could throw in a scene with some person dressed like in pajamas, strapped to the bed, doing the whole vomiting scene. But about halfway through this is when it tries to start to be funny with the character, the evil demon type character licking the woman who's being possessed. It's not particularly funny to me, but it may fly with Asian audiences just because it's weird in a way that they might find amusing. I don't know. This is another scene where the possessed woman slips down the stairs. See? Again, it's sort of slapsticky, which, in the United States, slapstick doesn't really play all that well, but in Asia it still kind of plays, in terms of the comedy. So I'm not sure what the international appeal is for a comedy like this. And I think they make some joke about her name, which I don't quite get. I think it's because of Twitter, and then they're both following each other. So, I mean, they're making attempts at humor. I don't think it's really coming across, at least for me. Maybe if you live in the Philippines, this is, see, Exorcist, and even make the sis bigger. See, get it? Written and directed by Fifth Solomon. That's an interesting name, Fifth. And this was kind of a funny bit here. Like, somebody shows up to buy ice, but again, that part of it doesn't fly in America. Like, who goes out to buy ice from, like, a person? And then they both, like, she's screaming, trying to keep the possessed woman out. And then somebody shows up for ice, and then they both sort of drop their persona and say, no, you got to come back. We don't have any ice. And then they go back to screaming. It's okay. I mean, that's kind of a funny bit. But, it's probably not going to translate well. And probably December is a bad time to release it, at least for the United States, because it's Christmas here. I don't know anybody wants to go see a horror parody on Christmas. There definitely is a scene to go to the movies, people who don't celebrate Christmas. There's a whole big tradition of going out for Chinese food and going to the movies, but I'm not sure this is a movie even for that. But it just doesn't look that funny. It just looks odd and weird and slapsticky. But it's probably not aimed at me. So the first act, I don't know, the two sisters fight because apparently both their parents died, and the one sister blames the other, and then for whatever reason the other sister is possessed by an evil demon, and then in the second act she causes all sorts of problems. They fight. Eventually they bring in an exorcist, to get rid of the demon or whatever it is. And I imagine this probably ends in the third act with, like, the sisters coming to terms with their parents' death, and then that forces the demon, because they're okay again. The forgiveness makes the demon go away, would be my guess. Maybe. In terms of comedy, yeah, I guess. I mean, it can work. It's just not really for me. It's probably not for an American audience. As a movie like Scream, which really wasn't a comedy, but it's kind of a parody of slasher movies. A movie like Scary Movie, see, they, bombard you with pop culture. They have Chris Elliott doing weird stuff, and, so, but even that I didn't really find all that funny. And, I mean, once in a while I'll see a clip from it and be like, that's okay, that's kind of funny. Parody movies generally don't do well for me because, they're more, parody stuff should really be short. It should really be short, because once you kind of go through the highlights of whatever it is you're parodying, it's over. You don't need to draw it out and have a big plot. You just need to hit the highlights, boom, 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 and then get out. So Scary Movie, isn't awful to me because it sort of jumps around in a lot of movie genres, but ultimately it's just gonna, a lot of people, especially whether it's in Hollywood or anywhere else, they get caught up in it, and they focus on the piece rather than the movie as a whole. So if you're doing a comedy movie with a single narrative, what you really have to do is sort of lay the groundwork that it builds and builds and builds, so that the third act is just one hilarious situation after another that you've built to. In a sketch type movie where you're jumping around like Scary Movie, you can't really build that hard, and what you kind of have to do is you have to front load the movie with more light parodies and not really get to the big parodies to the end. You have to save big stuff for the end. And that's harder to do, because if essentially it turns into a sketch movie. So if you have the first act and it's just full of sketches that are amusing, but they're not really, really hitting, then you're going to start to tune out. If you put something in that's too hard hitting, then in the middle of the movie sags, and people could tune out then, or they could say, oh, this has run out of gas. So it's really hard. I mean, that's why, movies like Airplane are so great, because it really just hits you again and again and again. And it's really tough to do. But there was a lot to draw from in Airplane, and the characters themselves in Airplane are treating things very seriously. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people in movies, they, again, break the fourth wall, and they're not consistent in their comedy. Comedy's the toughest thing to write. It really is. It's tough to keep going. It's tough to sustain. You need people with timing. You need, so many elements have to come together. And it has to be a shared thing. Like, we all have to be in on it. You have to have seen The Exorcist to really get this movie. And if you've never seen it, and the movie's almost 50 years old, then there's a good chance a lot of you haven't seen it at all. You kind of know of it, but you haven't seen it. Then what are you doing here? Like, this isn't... I mean, it was a big movie for its time, but it's not big now. So, I don't know. I think it's a weird choice, a weird movie, but I thought I'd show it to you because, hey, Filipino comedy. And that's it for me, Tony D, and Little Joan. Little Joan very much wants to go out, so we have to go. Check us out on Bitchute and Rumble, though, and we'll see you tomorrow.